Hello YouTube fam, my name is Gina Marie Bova and thank you for joining me on my channel. This is where I like to talk about true crime, solved and unsolved cases, as well as missing person cases that I don't feel have gotten enough attention from mainstream media. If you're interested in these types of cases, I do hope that you will hit the subscribe button and the little bell that's next to it so that you are informed when I post new content, which is a minimum of twice per week. And I hope we have some great conversations down in the comment section. I also hope that if you have a case that you'd like me to look into, you will post that in the comment section as well. Now, I already know I look a hot mess. It has been a very long day. If you have watched any of my other videos, you will probably notice animal sounds and cats and dogs and such. I live on a small ranch full of all sorts of critters, indoors and out. And if I were to wait to record these episodes until it was silent or peaceful, there's no way I would ever be able to record them. So I hope you can please bear with me. Today's episode is going to be talking about the West Mesa murders in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This is a unsolved true crime case as well as a missing persons case. Between the years of 2001 and 2006, at least 19 female sex workers disappeared from the streets of Albuquerque, New Mexico. The majority of them were Latina women in their 20s. Although there were rumors flying around amongst the other sex workers in the area, no one really knew for sure what happened to these women for many years. Police don't tend to take these cases very seriously. They chalk the disappearances up to drug use or their high-risk lifestyles, and neither does the mainstream media, or even the general public for that matter. I mean, just compare Gary Ridgway and Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy is arguably more infamous, yet Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer, has murdered at least twice, if not 3 times the amount of women that Ted Bundy did. So why do you think that Bundy got more publicity and put more fear into the hearts of the average citizen than Ridgway did? And for me, the answer is simple. Bundy killed 20 to 30 petite white females aged 12 to 26 who were either in college or from the middle-class neighborhoods. Ridgway, on the other hand, targeted young sex workers, and they were multiple races. So when 19 sex workers vanished from Albuquerque, New Mexico, hardly anyone batted an eye. Except for the family and friends, that is. Obviously. It wasn't until 2009 that any of these missing women were found, and the discovery of 11 of the missing women came with more questions than answers. The date was February 2nd, 2009. Christine Ross was walking her dog. Her dog's name was Ruka, in the West Mesa area of Albuquerque. This was a large fence area that was getting ready to be developed. Ruka tugged her over to the fence line, and when Christina saw what caught her dog's attention, the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. There was a large femur bone coming up out of the dirt. I would be horrified. Christine sent her friend, who was a nurse, a picture of the bone, and her friend confirmed her suspicions that this was a human femur. So Christine immediately phones the Albuquerque Police Department. And when they arrive, obviously they know it's a crime scene, but they had no idea the magnitude of the situation. Investigators began digging methodically, and that one bone turned into many, many more. They uncovered the remains of 12 bodies, one of which was a fetus. Later it was announced that all 11 victims were females. These were homicides, and strangulation was suspected. Eventually, they were able to identify these victims. So they were identified as the following missing people. And I apologize in advance. I know I'm going to butcher at least one of these names, but I'm going to do my best not to. Selania Edwards. She was a 15-year-old runaway from Lawton, Oklahoma, and was the only victim from out of state. The other victims were identified as 15-year-old Jamie Barella, 22-year-old Monica Candelaria, 26-year-old Victoria Chavez, 24-year-old Julie Nieto, 32-year-old Cinnamon Elks, 24-year-old Virginia Cloven, 28-year-old Veronica Romero, 24-year-old Doreen Marquez, 27-year-old Evelyn Salazar, and 22-year-old Michelle Valdez. Also, the fetus was determined to belong to Valdez. She was 4 months pregnant when she was killed. At least 6 more women are missing from the same location. It is suspected that they met the same fate. These women have not been found yet, and until they are, efforts to locate them should continue, so please look closely at their photos. Darlene Trujillo went missing on July 5th, 2001, when she was 20 years old. Anna Vigil went missing on January 20th, 2005, when she was 20 years old. Felipa Gonzalez went missing on April 27th, 2005, when she was 22 years old. Nina Heron disappeared on May 14th, 2005, at 21 years old. Chantel Waits went missing on March 15th, 2006, when she was 29 years old. And Leah Peebles disappeared on May 22nd, 2006, when she was 23 years old. Now, if you research this case, you will find articles that say a 13th body was found within a mile of where the 11 were found. Don't let this confuse you like it did me. That body was actually unearthed from an ancient Native American burial ground and had no relation to this case. So moving on, before I go into my rant about digging up ancient Native American burial grounds, which happens way too often in this country. Moving on. It goes without saying that this is the work of a serial killer. Although no one knows who the culprit is, there have been many theories. I will list a few here, but please remember that these are only theories. No one has been charged in these cases. So this is all alleged and theories and rumors and whatever you want to call it, okay? And there's been a lot of them, but I think I'm going to be mentioning 3 or 4 of them here today. Okay, one of the earliest theories came from some of the local sex workers themselves, okay? They believed that it was a dirty cop. They believed the dirty cop was kidnapping the girls off the street and raping them, beating them, decapitating, and burying them in the desert. There's been no evidence of this, but they really believe it. The police have not revealed if the victims found in the West Mesa were decapitated, or not. The bodies were fully decomposed at the time of their recovery, and officers have stated that they were believed to have been strangled, but they haven't really given a whole lot of information out, citing that it is still an ongoing investigation. One person of interest that was named by authorities is Joseph Blee, or Blay, B-L-E-A. I'm going to say Blee, but I'm not quite sure how it's pronounced. His ex-wife, April Gillen, called police and told them that they needed to look into her ex. But officers were already well acquainted with Mr. Blee. They had run across him nearly 140 times between 1990 and 2009. 140 run-ins with law enforcement in, 20 years? 19 years? What? How is he still even on the street at this point? He had exposed himself after calling one woman over to his car. He frequented the same strip that all of these ladies that came up kidnapped or missing and murdered were working on. He frequented that same strip. He has been pulled over and had rope and electrical tape on his passenger seat, and he was pulled over because he was trying to get a sex worker to get into his car. He had been tailed by officers and watched, and it was reported by these officers that he would keep circling the block and staring at these workers, at these women on the corner or whatever, and some of them he would even appear to stalk them. Why they did nothing about that, I'm not quite sure. They got a search warrant after the 11 bodies were found to search Mr. What did I say his name? Blee or Blade. They got a search warrant to search his place, okay? Right after they found these victims in the West Mesa. And they searched his home, and they found women's jewelry, and they found underwear that his wife, named Cheryl Blee, said were not hers. She also stated that she seen her kids wearing jewelry that she had never seen before. She didn't know where it came from. So they were able to take all of that. Police, though, have not disclosed whether or not the underwear and jewelry belonged to the Mesa victims. Mr. Blee is currently in prison for unrelated crimes. Thank God at least he's not out here with the rest of us. He is serving a 90-year sentence for sexual assault on 4 victims, which occurred in the late 80s and early 90s. When questioned, Mr. Blake denies completely any involvement in the West Mesa murders. Obviously. Of course he would. Another person of interest is a man named Lorenzo Montoya. He was killed in 2006 prior to the West Mesa victims being found, but after they went missing, if that makes sense. And the way that he died makes me understand just why he is a person of interest. Montoya used to cruise the same strip that the victims worked on. He is said to have paid many of them for their services. He had a tendency to be very violent with the girls. His first arrest for paying for sex was in 1998. He picked up an undercover officer and offered to pay her $40. Genius. Then in 1999, Vice detectives watched as Montoya picked up a worker and then followed as he drove her down a dark, dead-end road. And when they caught up to them, they arrested him and reported that he was in the process of attempting to strangle and rape this woman. First of all, how far behind were they following from? That he had a chance to get all the way to the end of the road, park the car, start strangling and raping this woman before the cops even pulled up. That was some crack detective work there. Anyways, on that same role of crack detective work, they dropped the ball. Certain policies or constitutional rights were not met as far as the investigation and how they treated him, and therefore the charges were dropped in December of 2006. He invited what police were calling a freelance dancer, stripper, to his mobile home to pay for her to dance for him and then extra services, okay? Unbeknownst to Montoya, when she showed up, her boyfriend was there too, but he stayed hidden outside. He accompanied her over to the trailer where she met up with Montoya, and although he waited outside the trailer, he was staying fairly close so that he could wait till she got done and make sure she was safe. Unfortunately, he obviously didn't wait close enough, because I know trailers, and I know that trailers have thin-ass walls, so you should be able to hear shit. But apparently, after what seemed to be way too long of a time, he walked around to the other side of the trailer to check in on his girlfriend, see if he could peek through a window or something, but he ran into Montoya, who was outside now. Montoya was standing by his own SUV. Montoya apparently had a flashlight in his hand, and on the ground next to him was, partially wrapped in a blanket, the dead body of the dancer. She was partially wrapped, like I said, in a blanket, and had been bound by duct tape and cord around her wrists, her knees, and her ankles. She had been obviously beaten, she was raped, and she was strangled to death. Her boyfriend, seeing this, pulled out a gun and shot and killed Lorenzo Montoya. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Police say that when Montoya died, the disappearances of the sex workers stopped as well. So that would be why he is a huge person of interest. Of course, he wouldn't be able to really pay for any of his crimes because he got put down and didn't get to answer for these crimes. Or, I mean, if he is the one who did it, now police can't talk to him and try and find out where the other girls went. But that's besides the point. The final theory that I will discuss is the most recent one that I could find. Apparently, after receiving an anonymous tip, Albuquerque police and the FBI say that they have successfully linked the West Mesa murders to a sex trafficking ring from Central America. Supposedly, these people from Central America have operations in Las Vegas, Nevada, El Paso, Texas, Killeen, Texas, and Denver, Colorado. reportedly they go to towns that are having big ass events like fairs or whatever, concerts or whatever, sports games, whatever the big event is. And these sex workers would know about these events and would hang out outside of there and hope to be able to pick up extra clientele, right? So these traffickers would go there too and snatch up these girls, right? So then they pick the girls up, they force them into working for them. The consequences for refusing, for trying to get away, for not doing as they're told, they can be extremely harsh. And sometimes these girls pay with their lives. My question is this: if they have actually linked it to this trafficking ring, why have they not arrested anyone? How can they be so sure that it is linked to the trafficking ring and not these others? And if they are that sure and just can't tell us for whatever reason, because ongoing investigation or what have you, then why are Blee and Montoya still named as persons of interest? If they have it already linked and it's guaranteed that this is who's doing it, then why haven't they taken these two guys off of the persons of interest list? It sounds to me like they're trying to have a scapegoat. Yep, it's a sex trafficking ring, and then just sweep it all under the rug. And meanwhile, I haven't heard of anything since, what was it, 2019? Well, I understand that was only 2 years ago, but that's 2 years ago, and there have been no other reports from anywhere on this. These girls are still missing, and the victims of the homicides, their parents, their families, their children, whoever, they need closure. So just because it sounds good to say that it's the sex trafficking ring. Not that I'm saying that there are no sex trafficking rings or that is not a possibility. To say it, that is guaranteed what it is, and then say nothing else after that, but yet still have these other guys as persons of interest, makes zero sense to me. I don't understand it. And I was reading an article where one of the parents of the victims from the Mesa murders was saying that she's left multiple messages trying to find out if there's been any updates, any progress in the case, and nobody is calling her back. Like I said, I think it's just being swept under the rug like it doesn't matter. And my cat is mooning you. I apologize. Anywho, I don't know what to say about it other than there are still so many questions. There are still victims that are missing. There are still families in search of closure. If you have any information about the victims that were found in the West Mesa, about the culprit who put them there, or any information on any of these missing women that are still missing, that we don't have any conclusions, there are phone numbers going to be listed in the description section of this video. If you know something, please say something. You can remain anonymous, but please say something. You will be bringing much needed closure and could be even saving a life. I thank you very much for sticking with my ramblings today because, like I said, it's been a long day. I'm tired, and I do have MS, and so when I get tired, I get a little bit, it's more difficult for me to speak. So this sounds like a lot of ramblings and stutterings and ums, and so if you made it this far, thank you for bearing with me. I really appreciate you. I will do my best to get a good night's sleep before I try to video another, but I really wanted to get this one out. I've been working so hard on this case, and I just feel like not enough is being done to find out who did this and to find where those other girls are. They're still out there somewhere, and their families deserve closure. And hopefully, if they are still alive, maybe somebody will recognize one of these girls and say something, and they can be rescued. And that would be the ultimate solution. So anyways, I'm going to let y'all go for the night. I'm going to go get me some rest, and I am going to be back on the grind tomorrow. I want y'all to stay safe out there. If you know something, please say something. Please don't forget to subscribe, hit the little bell, like my videos, comment on them, post any case suggestions that you've got. I'm still new at this. I can use all the help I can get. So I'll talk to y'all soon. Have a good night.